Okay, how about now? Anybody there? Hello? Hello, hello, hello. It says I'm live. It says my mic is working. It says the video is working. Kaylin says good to go. Utah Mike says he can see me. Okay. Okay. I've been talking away and evidently I have not been going out. So I apologize for that. Let me get back here and we'll start all over and we'll try to get what we can get done in about 40 minutes. I am so sorry. Let me go back and welcome everybody all over again. Okay, so we have here this evening, we have Mother Earth Garden Club. Welcome. Good evening. Good to see you. Gray Man Pepping Gill. Good evening. Good to see you. South Florida DCL. Little Known Prepper Kaylin Strain coming over from Gill's channel. I think that's where I've seen her before. Diana 2, Little Known Prepper Jack from down under in Australia. And then, let me see, Holly Ivans and Utah Mike, Phaeoxerus. Gosh, some great people. Kaylin Strain, I said that one before. Let me see. Okay, so tonight's subject is basically the campaign process. And so we've had some major changes in the campaign process. So one of the first major changes was with Theodore Roosevelt. He was what we call the whistle-stop campaigner. So although we'd had some train campaigning before, Abraham Lincoln did some train campaigning. That was one of his trademarks. But the first one to use it to the extent that it was used, especially way out west, and this was in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, and Northern California was Theodore Roosevelt. And so he was out there campaigning for quite a bit on those train stops. And they attribute that to being part of the reason why he won his campaign. The next major thing after that basically became and then right before that, of course, was Morse. And so in Morse code, they were able to take platforms and everything else and send them over Morse code from one area to another fairly rapidly compared to the old Pony Express and things like that. And they were able to get information to newspapers. So newspapers were a primary means of campaigning. Then we had the whistle stop campaigning. The next one after that was radio. And one of the ones who was very good at radio campaigning was FDR. And then after FDR, the next one was basically the 1960 presidential debates, where actually up until the time that he appeared on TV, Vice President Nixon had the presidency pretty much sewn up. But once he appeared on TV and they showed him in different lighting and everything else than they did John Kennedy, Vice President Nixon appeared to be very swamped by the questions and appeared to be a little bit on the nervous and sweaty side. And so just the appearance alone, they think, swayed the overall campaign towards JFK and away from Vice President Nixon. And then after that, our next major thing that came along was color TV. And then after color TV, of course, then we had the internet. And with that, we had social media and things like that. So basically, one of the first to really use a lot of good social media, internet, website design, and everything else was Barack Obama. And so, they attributed a lot of his campaigning success to winning the election as to being his, two things. Number one, his use of technology, and number two, the strategy on how they targeted certain states. And the Republicans took those states for McCain, took those states for granted, and because they took those states for granted, and Obama went and campaigned on them, he swung those states over. probably the most prominent of those was Virginia. Virginia had been, up until the time of Barack Obama, a pretty conservative state. And since then, it has been blue and sometimes shifting a little bit towards purple. But, Barack Obama basically switched Virginia over to a blue state. So, that's kind of where it is. Hello, Butch Graves. Welcome. Good evening. Good to see you. So we have two different kinds of campaigns going on. We have the nomination campaign, and then we have the general campaign. The United States has the longest process for nominating a candidate and then for the election of that candidate of all the countries on earth. We have pretty close to 300 days. So the next one after us is Israel, has 101 days. Germany has 60 days. Australia, 42 days. Canada, 36 days. Great Britain, 17. Japan, 17 for the upper house, 12 for the lower house, and South Korea only has 15 days. So, part of that process is just we get tired of the politics. We get tired of, the shifting, stances in order to buy votes. One of the things that I'm tired of is to me, this is my opinion. Okay, so I want to stress that right up front. Hello, Triple G, welcome. I believe that the Democrats pre-select their candidate, and that decision is going to be, I'm going to say 75 to 80% made up before we go into the nomination process. Okay, they don't cannibalize each other to the extent that the Republicans do. The Republicans, it's a free-for-all, and we saw that especially during the Trump campaign, the 2000. When was that? 16, I believe it was, campaign, where we had 14 candidates on the stage all at one time, and they were cannibalizing and accosting and attacking each other. And remember, whatever you say during the campaign for the nomination carries over, and that's going to be remembered during the general election. So whereas the Democrats don't get to the point to where they're really going after each other on stage to the extent that the Republicans do, what the Republicans are doing is one of those people who has a whole bunch set against them by the other candidates, that's going to be remembered by the general population when it gets to the general election. And so I think we're disingenuous in the fact that we have a tendency to cannibalize each other. And I think that's terrible. So, we could be a lot more civil with each other during the nomination. Then we talk about the candidate and the campaign staff. And so the campaign staff is enormous, and the campaign staff is super expensive. And so if we take a look at it, we're going to take a look just at Obama's campaign staff during the 2008 election. So at the senior campaign staff, you had a campaign manager, media strategist, senior strategist for communications and message, senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, that's a name everybody probably remembers, deputy campaign manager, chief operating officer, chief of staff, chief financial officer, general counsel, senior communications advisor, communication director, deputy communications director, national press secretary, traveling spokesperson, traveling press secretary. You probably remember her name. It was Jen Psaki. She became his press spokesperson afterwards. Scheduling and advance, director of rapid response, director of speech writing, political director, constituency director, youth vote director, then research and polling department, a research director and pollsters. Then you had the Joe Biden. Well, let's go over here. Let's finish up with this first. He had a finance director, deputy finance director, director of grassroots fundraising, national finance chair, direct mail, internet and information technology. This was a new department. This was the first time we had one like this. Chief technology officer, new media director, online organizers, bloggers, video, email, internet advertising, senior party strategist, economic policy director, national security coordinator, national field director, and a 50-state voter registration director. Then we had the Joseph Biden staff, Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, Communications Director, Traveling Press Secretary, and Traveling Speechwriter, and the Michelle Obama campaign staff, which was a senior advisor and chief of staff and communications director. So all these people are coordinating this campaign, and that's a massive amount. They don't do this for free. They're going to be giving up 10 months of their life. So somebody's got to pay their rent and all that other kinds of stuff while they're out there campaigning. So it becomes a very expensive proposition. Let's see. We have had rain here, Holly, like you had not. Was it Holly was saying that? Yeah, Holly, like you would not believe. I think we've gotten almost a full year's worth of rain in the last 2 weeks. The Iowa Dem caucuses used to be the same day as the Republican caucuses till the DNC screwed it up after the 2016 caucus debacle. I just hope we don't see a repeat of the 1968 Democratic Convention, and it appears that way, that there's going to be an awful lot of student unrest, let's put it that way. I wholeheartedly agree, Mother Earth. I think they wear us out. I'm already over with. I don't want to see anything else. I don't want to hear anything else. I'm fed up with the campaign. I'm tired of it. I'm worn out. I don't see anything new. I don't see any. There's nothing out there for me, and I'm just tired of seeing it. I'm ready for it to be over. Just make it over for me, if you would, please, and let's get this done and let's move on. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that regardless of who gets elected this coming November, half the country won't accept the results, and I don't think we'll. And I think we'll have problems starting in November and once the elections come out. And of course the question still is, can we even trust the elections? So, that's and the election phone calls are the same here and crazy. Now the endless mailings, remember that you have frocking, and so the frocking by the incumbent is another one of those advantages that they have. Now they can't use the frocking or free mail for purely electoral purposes, okay? But when they brag to you, when they send you a letter a week saying, here's what I am doing and here's what I'm accomplishing and here's the bills that I'm introducing into the House or the Senate, and here's where I stand on this bill and there's coming, that's basically campaigning. They're letting you know their stances on things, and that's a free benefit that they have over anybody who wants to go up against them. So let's see here. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Oh gosh, I probably get a dozen unwanted phone calls every day, and I block this number, and gosh, I have a feeling that half the numbers in the U.S. are blocked on my cell phone. Wouldn't that be nice, Mad Chick? Wouldn't that be nice? Return to sender? Yeah, it costs them extra money because it has to be paid for going back. Yes, I agree. No more omnibus bills. I would like to see one bill, but we're never going to get that because sometimes they have to include writers in order to get somebody else to vote for it. And, so that the writer is the way that they get the other people to support their bills. And, my favorite one, the most famous of all of them, of course, was the Defense Appropriations Act. And I forget what year it was. And Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House, and she would not even bring the bill to the floor unless they approved her rider. And her rider was several $1,000,000 for Bay Area Rapid Transport, getting another rail line in San Francisco. Well, this rail line basically went from, I think it was either Embarcadero or from, what's the name of that chocolate company? Anyhow, there's another square, and it's where they take all the buses from what used to be Letterman Hospital down to that square, and that's where you catch a civilian bus to go to the airport to fly home from after you get discharged from Letterman Hospital. And it was called, gosh, I can't remember. Anyhow, but it went from either there or Embarcadero Square all the way up past her husband's building. Of course, there was a stop put there where her husband's building was. So if you have a stop on BART, that automatically like multiplies the value of that building by a factor of 20. And then it went all the way up to Salesforce headquarters. And Salesforce, of course, was one of her major donors. And so then the last of that line was right there at Salesforce headquarters, or Salesforce, compound. And that significantly improved or increased the quality or the value of his property. So, they approved the funding for that BART rail line, and she agreed to vote for the defense appropriations bill. So, that's just the way we did it. And I think it's wasted money. So, that's my personal opinion. So how do we raise money? Regulating campaign finance. And we've tried several times to limit campaign finance. And, we even had a president denounce the Supreme Court at a State of the Union speech over their decision about campaign finance. And it's crazy. We're getting so political and so divided that I don't see us going anywhere. Some of the major bills that have been passed concerning trying to control spending and donations as far as political spending: the Corrupt Practices Act of 1910, 1911, and 1925, the 1939 Hatch Act, the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1970 and its amendments, including disclosure requirements of where money comes from, the Presidential Funding Program, the Federal Election Commission, and it's just we keep trying to get these things in. There's one called BICRA, BCRA, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. And so it divided money into hard money and soft money and how much you could get from each. And however, BICRA was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 2007. And that's one of the ones that President Obama denounced. And of course, 2010, we had the decision of Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission. And so it declared unconstitutional the BICRA ban on electioneering communications made by corporations and unions. And what it basically said was that a corporation is an entity, as is a union, and therefore they could be considered as donors, not only as donors, but also as voices supporting either one or the other. Of course, that was disliked by one party, even though they got the best advantage from it. The same as we had that advantage. Remember later President Johnson, when he was running for the House of Representatives before he became a senator, he asked his church for an endorsement. And this is back in the 1930s, I believe. I could look it up. Somebody can look it up. But the Johnson Act. But anyhow, he asked his church, because up until that time, it was free. I mean, if you take a look at the history of the United States, the vast majority of campaigning was done in the churches, okay? And so because President Johnson's own church at that time, well, I'm going to call him President Johnson, we'll call him LBJ, at that time refused to endorse him because they said he was crooked. Then as a result of that, he had the Johnson Act passed, which says that if any church endorses any candidate, they can lose their tax-free status. So that was the beginning of that separation of churches cannot talk about politics. Was all because Johnson could not get the endorsement of his own church. So it's crazy. So should the federal government have limits on campaign funding and on campaign spending? So, you know, it's crazy. Yeah, Dodd's newer, though. Remember, we're only covering up until around 2008 in this book. So PACs, or political action committees. Political action committees donated, of the money that was donated by political action committees, 55% was donated to Democrats, 45% to Republicans. So what is a PAC? It's a special interest group, such as a labor union, a corporation, or a trade union, and would have ideological issue groups which seek to make donations to campaigns in order to establish a political action committee and receive advantageous consideration for their stance, their ideological stance, if that person is elected. Although a good number of PACs of all persuasions existed prior to the 1970s, during the 1970s, the decade of campaign finance reform, when said that you couldn't have, but except for certain limits on how much money you could receive, that's when the PAC started because they were considered individuals. So you had a PAC could donate the $2,000 and everything else. So the number of PACs began, they grew from 113 PACs that were registered in 1972 to 4,268 in 1988. As of 2008, there were 4,000 still registered with the FEC. So 80% of the money, 70% of the money from a PAC goes to local House representatives, 20% goes to senatorial campaigns, and 10% to presidential campaigns. So PACs effectively use contributions to punish legislators, and affect policy primarily in the short term. So a legislator who votes contrary to the wishes of a PAC can see their donations dwindle or be withdrawn. But those who are successful in legislating as the PAC wishes are rewarded and given even greater donations. Then you also have leadership PACs and membership PACs and everything else. The Supreme Court ruled in Buckley versus Valley in 1976 that no limit can be lawfully placed on the amount of money a candidate can spend from their own family's resources, since such spending is considered a First Amendment right of free speech. So you can spend your own money, but I, as an individual, don't have that same amount of free speech to where I can support a candidate with a monetary donation. That's not considered free speech. That's considered buying a vote or buying a legislative position, even though I could, if I wanted to, and we've seen this done by different people. George Soros is famous for this. He will create PACs so that he can give money to that PAC and have that PAC give to the candidate, okay? And that way, even though it's Soros-funded money, he can give all kinds of money, and then that money can go towards that candidate, and he can support the candidates of his choice. And he does a lot of that in California, especially. District attorneys, local representatives, and different things out there. Then you also have public funds, matching funds. So public matching funds, donation to presidential campaigns are whereby every dollar raised from individuals in amounts less than the total of $251 can be matched by the federal funds. So, if I were to give as an individual $250 to candidate X, and that's all I give to candidate X is $250, then they can apply to the Federal Elections Commission and say, hey, this guy gave us $250. We want to use the federal election campaign, and we can match those funds with federal money. Okay. So there are 527 soft money political committees, and they're tax-exempt organizations that are created to raise money for political activities, such as voter mobilization, issue advocacy, voter registration, all those kinds of things. These expenditures favor Democrat candidates by nearly 3-1. 527 organizations participating in the 2008 election included America Votes, Change to Win, and then they also had the College Republican National Committee on the Republican side. So then you have 501c groups. So a 501c group is a nonprofit tax-exempt interest group that can engage in varying levels of political activity depending upon the group. 501c3 groups, for example, are not allowed to engage in any political activities. So 501c3s are basically churches or anything that is religiously affiliated. So then we get into the traditional media and strategy to control media coverage. First, candidates and their media consultants use various strategies in an effort to obtain favorable press coverage. First, campaign staff members often seek to isolate the candidate from the press so that you don't have access to them. We saw that work extremely well in the 2020 election. Remember, we had the lockdown, and so one candidate was out campaigning and to small groups because of the lockdown, and the other candidate was in his basement and didn't campaign at all. And so, that proved to be a very effective campaign for that person. Nobody saw him. Nobody knew anything really about him. They remembered him from 8 years before, assumed that nothing had changed, and he got the votes. Second, the campaign stages media events. Third, campaign staff and consultants have cultivated a technique called spin, where they put forward the most favorable possible interpretation for their candidate. I saw one today, and it was, what's her name? Corinne Jean-Pierre, her noon press conference. And she kept harping on this. Republicans have cut 20% from VA, have cut 20% from police funding and everything else. And so that didn't sound right because the budget's increasing. So how could they have cut? Well, it turns out that, listen to the spin, she's saying, and she's making a public announcement, Republicans have cut 20% from the VA. But that's not really what's happening. What's happening is Republicans requested that the increase in VA spending be reduced by 20%. So you're going to, so instead of increasing VA funding by 100%, they only want it increased by 80%. So instead of saying they're only going to allow an 80% increase, they're saying they're cutting 20%. So see how that spin goes? So now people are thinking, hey, this party wants to cut VA funding. No, they don't want to increase the funding at the same level as the other party does. Does that make sense? Okay, let me see if I can catch up with where we are here. I agree, Chef Tech. The whole thing is corrupt as all get out. Kaylin, isn't Dobbs the reversal of? Let me check it. I think Dobbs doesn't have anything to do with campaign financing. I think Dobbs was the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Yeah, Dobbs is a reversal of Roe v. Wade. It has nothing to do with elections. So, and I'm not going to get into that discussion here. Oops. So, We're talking about campaign finances. I don't want to discuss anything on that line. So Mother Earth, let me tell you, my wife, where did she go? Oh, she had to go. She had to go to the phlebotomist and get some blood drawn this morning. She had for a doctor's appointment tomorrow. And so my daughter had sent her a Starbucks gift card for Mother's Day. And so she said, hey, I'm going to stop by Starbucks. Do you want me to get you a cappuccino on the way home? And I said, sure, that sounds great. So she stopped by and I said, I just small one. And so she stopped by Starbucks on the way home this morning. And for a cappuccino and a coffee, it was, hey, Helen, I think it was $10 for the two of them, which is kind of crazy. So I was going to yell at her, but she's got the door closed, so she doesn't bother us. And she's got the 3 dogs in there too, so that they don't bark. My husband's job is now hiring at $22.50 an hour. It took him years working just to make a few dollars above this. And we call that compression in the Remember, my first 21 years, I was a code breaker, Russian voice intercept operator. And then I wanted a job where I could tell my wife where I was going, what I was doing, and when I'd be home, and where I could, do things. We had to do a lie detector test and urine test and everything else on a regular basis because of our security clearance. So I wanted to get away from that when I retired. So I got my master's in human resources management, and I spent from 1991 when I retired until I basically retired from HR in 2015. I was in human resources. So I was the director of human resources, and we call that pay compression. Okay. And that's very difficult. That's very difficult to operate because, I've got a person who has got, let's say, 15 years on the job, and I've been giving him steady pay increases because of outstanding performance. Now, in order to be competitive with other industries, to get somebody to come on at an entry level, I have to pay something to where you don't see that same level of expertise granted or acknowledgement of worth granted because I just can't afford it. I got to get these new people in, but in order to get them in and pay a competitive wage, it's pretty close to where this wage is. And we are very aware of that. And we look for ways to overcome that. And we have not come up with a good way around that yet. And I am so sorry that is happening. And yeah, you're right. It's frustrating. It devalues the individual's self-worth and self-dignity. They feel that they aren't being rewarded for outstanding performance, for tenure, for loyalty to the organization. I'm with you. We understand that. We know there's a problem. We just don't know how to fix it. And I wish we did. Maybe someday somebody far smarter than I am will come up with a solution for that. So tell your husband, I apologize. We are aware of the problem. It is something we talk about in the National Convention on a regular basis. And we just don't know how to solve the problem. There just isn't that much money. And so, and another one, I had a guy when I was director of the HR director for the homeless shelter, had a guy come in. He was head of our drug counseling department. And he was an ex-drug addict. And so he ran our halfway house and doing a marvelous job. I mean, we had a low residual return rate, and he was doing a fantastic job. And he went out and got his master's in social work, and he came in and brought me his master's degree. He says, how much do I get for this? I said, I'm sorry. It's not based off of a piece of paper. What are you going to do to increase the value of the work you're already doing? So I've got to show an increase in productivity in order to warrant an increase in pay. And showing me a piece of paper, what are you going to be doing differently? I said, I hate to say this, but the reality on the street is the only people who are going to value that piece of paper is going to be another organization. So in order to get a higher rate of pay based off of that piece of paper, you're going to have to go somewhere where they don't know what you're capable of producing already without the paper in order for that paper to have value. I hope I'm making sense. Okay, so, and then reaching voters, how do you control the media? And, little things go a long way, and of course things get stretched and things get, I watched one today. It was, what's the guy's name? It's on the Judicial Committee. And this guy, I call him the Walrus. He looks like, what's his name? I forget his name, but he was trying to read the Second Amendment, and because he's anti-gun, and so what he did was he picked up his copy of the Constitution, and he started reading from it, and he said, Second Amendment, okay, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." And so the other guy on the other side of the aisle said, wait a minute, that's not what mine says. Mine says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So what he was trying to do was he was trying to change it so that the right of the people did not appear, and it made it look more like only the militia can have arms. Okay. So, and we will do that quite a bit throughout the campaigning, is statements will be made that are half truths or partial truths and not full truth. And you've got to be aware of that. And you've got to research a lot of the claims that are made and a lot of the statements that are made. Let's see. I could reapply at my own company and they could offer me as much as what I'm making after 17 years as a new inexperienced employee. Sad. It is. I'm so sorry that's happening. And we're aware of it. Unfortunately, I wish there was something we could do about that. So there are three types. Actually, there's four types of advertisements that a person can do. There's a positive ad where they're basically saying, this is me, this is what I have done in the past, this is what I can do. So positive ads, you're never going to see a positive ad about the opponent. You're always going to see a positive ad about the candidate themselves. Then a negative ad. Negative ads are never about the candidate, they're always about the opponent, okay? This is what the opponent has done bad or something bad about the opponent. What they're trying to do is build themselves up by taking the other person down, okay? I don't react well to negative ads. I prefer positive ads. I have this theory about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then I combine that with Stephen Covey's. Stephen Covey talks about the ladder that's put, efficiency and effectiveness. So you can be the best painter in the world and put up a ladder and you can paint effectively or efficiently, but it's not effective unless the ladder is against the correct wall. So if you're painting the wrong wall, all the efficiency in the world is not going to get your job done. You got to be efficient at the right place at the right time. And so I kind of take Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that ladder principle, I put the two of them together, and I say, for example, I have done an awful lot in the HR arena, and I built rungs. And so as I build these rungs, I see these young whippersnappers who are learning the things that I'm teaching, and they're applying that. Well, they don't have to put as much energy into creating. All they have to do is learn. So I'm getting worn out and I'm slowing down. These young whippersnappers are coming up. Well, when they get on my rung of that ladder, I have two options. I can either say, hey, take the lead for a while. I'm going to learn from you. Let's let you go out there and expend all your energy and everything else. You're fresh. You can get it. Let's see if we can't take this organization. Let's see if we can't take this profession. Let's see if we can't take the theories to a higher level. Or I can say, hey, you're on my rung, and I can stab them in the back, okay? Which unfortunately is about 90% of the jobs in the US. They would much rather stab somebody who's up and coming in the back and keep them from getting on their rung than to promote that person and enable them to take the lead for a while you get a rest. And that way, what we could do is we could alternate. so that when one needs a rest, the other one takes the lead, and then we alternate, and that way we're constantly moving forward. But most people don't think that way. And that's, I think, the whole thing behind negative ads. Is the negative ad wants to keep that person off of your rung. You've got to stab them in the back in order to keep them from appearing to be even somewhere on the same plane as you are as far as a candidate. The third one is a contrast ad. So this is what I believe about this. This is what the other person believes about it. Unfortunately, the vast majority of those are based off of hyperbole. So they're going to put their position, and even though there's a very minuscule difference between the two positions, okay, they're going to use hyperbole to make this person appear to be way down here in comparison to where they're really here. Okay, so watch out for hyperbole. Watch out for exaggeration of the bad of the other candidate's position, because a lot of the time, they're not that bad. Just one second. Okay, testing. There we go. Okay. A lot of the time, most of the time, they aren't as bad as the hyperbole. Okay. I will tell you, the last president I voted for, I mean, I really liked the candidate, was Ronald Reagan. Since Ronald Reagan, I have never voted for a candidate. I have voted against the oppositional candidate. Okay. And that is, I have a choice between two, and I really don't care for either one. So which one is the less bad of the two? And so, I unfortunately, since about 88, I'm going to say, maybe 92, I have not voted for anybody as much as I have voted against the opposition candidate. Okay, the fourth type of advertisement that's used is what's called an inoculation. So I have done something in the past that is suspicious, or I've done something in the past that is controversial or could appear to be suspicious. So what I want to do is I want to get out in the open about that as quickly as possible, make my retributions, state my position, explain it, apologize if necessary. That's called an inoculation ad. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to take that ad off of the table as far as being something that can be used against me. So if I can get out there early enough and inoculate people against it so that they don't perceive that as being a major stumbling block of my candidacy, then I can take that out of play. Probably one of the best visual ads that was ever used was LBJ's campaign produced a television ad where there was a girl, and this was back in 1964. There was a girl sitting there with a daisy, and she was pulling the petals out of the daisy. And I hope that there's, maybe I'm the only one old enough to remember this, but she pulled the petals out of the daisy. She goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then when 10 happened, they stopped the girl counting, and they showed her with that. And in the background, you heard 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then it showed a mushroom cloud explosion. And, that was a pro Lyndon B. Johnson ad, because he was trying to show that his opposition was more prone to use nuclear warfare than he was. And so if you wanted peace, the girl and the daisy, vote Johnson. If you wanted nuclear warfare, vote the other way. And that was the subliminal meaning behind that whole ad campaign. I'm going to do another 3 minutes, and then we'll call it quits, because I guess I don't know what happened. I'm sorry I wasted 10, 15 minutes of your time here at the beginning this evening. The 2008 presidential campaign, 2004, November, potential candidates announced who they were. April 2006, they came with the official declarations. November 2006 started fundraising. April 2007, the primary debates. January 2008, primaries and caucuses. June 2008, the clear nominee. August through September 2008, party convention. November 2008 was election day. So basically, the election process for President Obama, the 2008 presidential timeline, took 4 years. So let me see if there's anything else I want to cover here in this. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We've covered it. All right. And then next session, next Monday, we are going to do the news media and their coverage of presidential elections. So that's chapter 15. So just a couple real quick reminders. Tomorrow night, we're going to be starting our James Wesley Rawles book, this How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. This is, now if you take a look at it, this is the beginning of Teotwalki, okay? T-E-O-T, the end of the world, Teotwa, as we know it. So Teowtawki, Teotwalki. Okay, so we're going to start this book tomorrow night. We're going to do the introduction and chapter 1. Please don't forget, we had a fantastic live Friday evening with Eric Christensen, the CEO of Nutrient Survival. And I believe that the code is still effective through this week. But if you order anything from Nutrient Survival, you can use the code CWP for Cold War Prepper Live, CWP Live, and that's a 20% discount on any orders that you may have. It was out of appreciation for him being on the live last Friday. So that's kind of where we are. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for tolerating my mess up with my mic and technology and everything else. I am so sorry. But for those of you who are new, thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it. We've got 15 on right now. And so let me get here to the book of Numbers. Chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So we'll see you all tomorrow night for James Wesley Rawles. I'm still looking for a time. I still need to get back with Gil. He has a very, very busy live schedule. And but I've got a couple more lives that are scheduled interviews. The CEO or the marketing director, one of the two, of Aquatabs is going to come on and talk to us about water purification and storage. And so I'm looking forward to that. We've got all kinds of great stuff planned here in the near future. So with that, remember that we are all in this together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because the only way we're going to get through this is if we unite and we get through this together. So take care, everybody. Thank you for your patience. See you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. Take care. Bye-bye. Had to get rid of all kinds of announcements in order to get to the end.